I want to talk about China a bit. I think China is a very important topic, and here's why. If you think of America's economy is in bad shape and America's GDP versus our national government debt is bad, China makes us look like pikers by comparison. China is in major trouble right now. So the question is, at least the way I'd look at it, is should we help China out at all? Should we try to do that? You know, on the theory that if we do them a good solid favor, that they'll remember that later on. Or should we just let the Chi-Coms suffer? Miles Yu joins me now, who's a senior fellow and director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. Miles, welcome back to the program. And if I've framed it in a way different than you would, please feel free to course correct me at that point. But as far as I'm concerned, if China's on its lips, I want to leave them there.
Well, thank you for having me, Lars. The Chinese economy is constantly up and down, up and down. When it's up, it's because the West foolishly accepts China as a part of the international free trade system when China is not. When it's down, it's because all the command economic mechanisms in China kicked in. So China has always reached to the verge of collapse, and every single time, either in the 1970s or 1980s, and 2001 when China joined the WTO, it is America that basically helped bail China out. So this time, I think we're in a place where U.S. and China realized these two countries are actually operating on completely different systems. So will America bail out China again? I hope not.
And in fact, we could end up bailing out, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could end up bailing out China, not by Uncle Sam writing a giant check, but by China reaching into our financial markets and just saying, hey, we're in trouble, we want to borrow some money, in effect. And then they get money out of Wall Street and places like that by promising amazing returns. And for whatever reason, there are a bunch of people on Wall Street and some of the bigger players among the big financial giants that say, yeah, this is a great place to make money. You say, but it's very, very risky. And by the way, you were helping out China, which wants to replace the United States economically, militarily, and otherwise. Why would you want to do that? And their answer seems to be, well, because in the short run, we're going to make a lot of money. Have I understood that incorrectly?
No, you understand it perfectly. And I think the major issue here is this. China is not a market economy. China is a non-market economy. No economic institution and no major country in the free world recognizes China as a market economy. That's a very important basic fact for us to remember. So when we engage China economically, that would mean that China and the United States are engaged economically on a very unfair basis. China closes the market to most Americans, and China creates a very hostile environment to American investment. They arrest American due diligence agencies. They harass American CEOs. They have marched into American market unhindered. So this is not reciprocity. It's not fair. In the end, they hollow America's manufacturer base, and you mentioned the capital market. And there's far more. Manufacturing, defense, and a lot of industries, this country are in big trouble because of the unfair economic engagement. Even today, if you go to Amazon.com, you buy goods, 70 to 90% of this Amazon stores, as we speak right now in 2023, are Chinese firms. And they are selling goods in America and drive out American competitors at a very unfair rate because, they enjoy a lot of, for example, postage favors, and they do a lot of coordinate the price gouging. So it is a problem. So hopefully, Secretary Raimondo is the Commerce Secretary. She has to tackle this fundamental systemic institutional reason, not just to share one thing there piecemeal.
Well, but that's the meeting I wanted to ask you about in particular. I'm talking to Miles Yu from the China Center. He's director of the China Center at Hudson. So you've got U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who said that she and her Chinese counterpart are meeting to improve communication. This sounds like the Biden administration is being very open and friendly with a country that plans to replace the United States economically if it possibly can. So are we going to get any kind of tough measures from the Biden administration cracking down on what China's doing?
Let me put it this way. U.S.-China policy has fundamentally changed about 6 years ago during the Trump administration. We have laid such a strong foundation. It will be almost impossible for the Biden administration, for any other party in power right now, to overturn that completely. So I think Secretary Raimondo goes to China, and she basically tried to tell the Chinese, hey, listen, we have a new awareness. We have economic engagement with you, but we also run a lot of security risk, and we also have a lot of risk in terms of our core values. We sanctioned, since the last administration, we sanctioned somewhere around 700 to 800 Chinese companies associated with the Uyghur repression, Hong Kong,
slave
abomination.
labor.
So all the issues, so we have tried to, and in the meantime, commerce is very important because commerce is actually the implementer of all the policies. I don't think that commerce is doing a really stellar job in terms of implementing the sanctions, and I think it could be better.
Well, Miles, one of the things that's troubled me the most, and I don't know how many Americans are aware of this, but if I started a company, I don't have a company, I have a little company, but it's not a public company, so it doesn't sell stock on the stock market. But if you start a company, a public company, you want to sell stock on the stock market, we have all these rules for American companies. You have to tell your shareholders how much the company is worth, what its liabilities are. You got to give them all this information, or you're not allowed to have stocks that are traded, on the U.S. exchanges. And that applies to every foreign company that wants to sell its stock on Wall Street. And then China comes along and says, hey, we want to be able to do that kind of business, but we don't want to be transparent that way. And for whatever reason, the Obama administration said, okay, you can come to the party and you don't have to follow the rules that everybody else has to follow. Is that ever going to get changed to where we tell China, you're not welcome at the party if you're not willing to give us all the information about your companies and how they operate, what their liabilities and assets and revenues are, like American and German and every other country on earth? Its companies have to do this. China, you have to do this too. Are we ever going to do that?
I think you're absolutely right. We began to do that about 5-6 years ago. We're doing that slowly, partly because China realized when America gets serious about implementing laws and regulations, China could not win. So China voluntarily withdrew some of the listings in the American Stock Exchange. But in the meantime, you see the American companies in China are in trouble on a massive scale. 70-80% of the companies in China, American companies, do not have any confidence in the Chinese environment, economic environment. So what you see here is a trend that the medium-sized, the small businesses have withdrawn from China. What really is representing the business lobby in this country for China is the top 2 or 3 big companies, mostly private equity firms like BlackRock. Those people have enormous power and in Washington. So that's where the problem is. I think you're right. I think we should really engage China economically, but we have to take care of our security first. And we have to do this based upon reciprocity. If China violates the law, we should punish them without any hesitation.